Watch what happens when a cotton swab soaked in highly volatile solvent rolls across a 400-year-old Renaissance canvas. The thick, yellowed varnish dissolves. The impossibly bright, raw ultramarine paint beneath is exposed to the air for the very first time in centuries. The chemical reaction is violent. And if you have ever had an amazing, deep conversation with someone, only to wake up the next morning wanting to ghost them, a remarkably similar dynamic happens in your nervous system. To an untrained eye, it looks like the masterpiece is being destroyed. The stinging shock isn't destroying the art, it is waking it up. Internet culture right now glorifies the untouchable. We worship the unbothered persona. We memorize scripts that tell us independence is the ultimate virtue. We convince ourselves that needing nothing makes us invincible. We build this thick layer of hyperindependence to protect ourselves. Which works, right? Or at least, that's what the nervous system thinks. But psychologically, that unbothered persona acts just like that centuries-old, hardened resin. It is a learned survival reflex masquerading as a lifestyle trend. It is a protective defense, and it is exactly why modern dating feels so exhausting. We demand authenticity from others, yet we are terrified of it in ourselves. We want to be loved for who we are, but we refuse to let anyone stay long enough to actually see it. Consider the aftermath of a rare moment of honesty. Two people in a parked car, the engine is off. The streetlights cast long shadows across the dashboard. For the first time in years, the performance drops. You share a piece of your history that usually stays buried. The other person just listens. They do not judge, they do not pull away. In that exact second, the space feels incredibly safe. The connection is real. The solvent works. You step out, you walk inside, you go to sleep. Then the sun comes up, you look at your phone. For many of us, waking up brings a wave of absolute dread. The heart races, the stomach drops. It is that familiar feeling of staring at the ceiling, replaying every single word, convinced you went entirely too far. You feel sick. You feel exposed, so you run. You leave the message on read. You put the phone face down. You stare at the blank wall. We call this the vulnerability hangover. We convince ourselves we overshared. We think we ruined the dynamic. We believe we made a catastrophic mistake by letting someone look behind the curtain. The mental loop is exhausting. You analyze their tone. You check their active status. You prepare for the rejection you are certain is coming. When we examine the neurology behind this, a fascinating picture emerges. Studies indicate this isn't just anxiety. It acts as a literal chemical alarm. Psychological models show the brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, can misinterpret this sudden emotional exposure as a literal survival threat. This potentially triggers a massive flood of stress hormone. Cortisol spikes. It feels like an oxidation panic. The raw, unprotected emotional pigments are suddenly exposed to the harsh oxygen of daily life. The air hurts. The exposure feels lethal. But this is not a moral failing. You did not choose this defense. But you are the one who can notice it. The environment that forced you to build this armor is in the past. The reflex is just a lingering echo, and echoes can be rewritten. Here lies the paradox. Because think about it for a second. Why would the brain panic when we finally get the exact connection we have been begging for? When that chemical alarm blares, the mind treats the intimacy as a catastrophic atmospheric breach. For many, this perceived breach is exactly where the sudden urge to cut contact comes from. To be clear, ghosting deeply hurts the other person. It leaves collateral damage. But we cannot stop the behavior until we understand the biology driving it. Sudden withdrawal is not necessarily an act of toxic apathy. It is not always callousness. Think of it as the Tarp Reflex. You throw a heavy, suffocating tarp over the exposed canvas. You sprint out of the studio. You do it to stop the perceived burning sensation of being truly seen. The loss of autonomy feels imminent, so you build a beautiful bridge. You panic at the sight of the other side. You immediately set it on fire. You are not running because you care too much. You are running because staying means admitting that your hyperindependence is no longer a choice you are making. It is a quarantine you forgot how to leave. which is an incredible amount of internal destruction over a text message that took 4 seconds to send. It's like you finally let someone see the real you, and your immediate biological instinct is to just burn the whole house down to stay safe. Shift the lens. Look at the canvas again. The intense, sickening vulnerability we feel the next morning is not a red flag. It is not a warning sign that the relationship is doomed. It is not evidence that we are fundamentally broken. It can actually be a biological indicator that the emotional armor was successfully bypassed. That intense discomfort is often just the raw sensation of sudden intimacy. You did not ruin the painting by opening up. You are simply feeling the air touch the canvas for the very first time. It wasn't a mistake. It was oxygen. The panic is often the clearest evidence of bravery. We have lived under the hardened resin for so long that fresh air feels like a threat. The goal of restoration is not to keep the art buried under yellowed varnish forever. The goal is to let it breathe. Breaking this cycle requires a deliberate tactical intervention. The goal is to stop throwing the heavy tarp over the canvas. Instead, try applying an isolation coat. In fine art conservation, an isolation coat is a temporary, breathable layer of protective varnish. It protects the raw paint while it cures in the open air. In human connection, this is the hangover text. When the urge to withdraw hits, the solution isn't to force ourselves to be overly affectionate. We do not have to pretend we are perfectly fine, nor do we have to disappear. We send a transparent, simple message. I had an amazing time yesterday. I'm just taking a quiet day to process and recharge. By explicitly naming the need for space, we provide the nervous system a temporary protective barrier. Psychologically, this pause helps shift us out of a reactive, panicked state. It moves processing from the reactive amygdala to the rational prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain. It honors the need for distance without destroying the connection. Don't throw the tarp over it. Let it cure. The environment that required this armor is not here anymore. You are. Understanding the chemistry does not immediately turn off the alarm. The flinch will still happen. But I keep wondering what would happen if we let someone see the one version of us nobody ever gets to see. The air has to hit the canvas eventually.